Hello everybody, welcome to E3 2014. My name is Christopher Thomas Plant. Today I am joined by the boss man Chris Grant, and we are going to talk about Homefront the Revolution. Fortunately, we have the game designer on Homefront Revolution, the game designer, as if there aren't a number of game designers on this game.
Absolutely.
Bas Salim, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for making time.
No worries,
amongst
no
all the
worries.
craziness.
No worries.
So, just to kick things off, we're gonna hop into the demo
Cool.
that you prepared for us and
Yeah.
kind of chat.
So yeah, I'll just set out the premise a bit. So we're at Crytek, we wanted to take what we found in the first Homefront, the premise and that idea of being a guerrilla fighter. We wanted to push it as far as we possibly could. So now we find ourselves 4 years into this occupation that started in Homefront. And yeah, so right now we're starting in a resistance safe house, which is basically you find these throughout the environment, and it's basically where the resistance gather together and they prepare their equipment. And this one in particular is a Molotov factory, so you'll see a few people preparing some explosives. Yeah, so the idea of being a guerrilla fighter is what we've built this game around. We wanted to provide a proper experience of being a guerrilla fighter. So scavenging the world, trying to utilize all of the things that you find in the world and building your arsenal, building your equipment, building your armor. That's what we wanted to push for, because again, being a guerrilla fighter, you don't have all of the same equipment as the KPA, which is the Korean People's Army. So you need to utilize the things that the environment offers you to try and tackle them head on.
Sure. Now I remember in the first Homefront, at least at the beginning, they tried to make it seem like you were totally underpowered, that you didn't have a lot. Towards the end, you suddenly had the ability to kind of destroy everything.
Yeah.
Are you more powerful in this? Because when I think of Crytek games, at least Crytek shooters,
Yeah.
it's Crysis. It's
Sure, yeah,
ungodly powerful character.
Absolutely. No, so that's one of the interesting things that we were really excited about for working on Homefront was it's very different to what we have in Crysis, because in Crysis obviously you have a nano suit, you've got these special abilities. In this you don't have all of that. This is it's stripped down. You have to utilize the environment around you and try to construct your arsenal, because you don't have all of these awesome tools and awesome equipment given to you. You have to build it yourself. And that was something that we really wanted to push forward. Obviously, we've built on the stuff that we learned from Crysis. We still have that heritage and DNA of building free roaming worlds, and that's something that we brought to Homefront, because the first Homefront, it was a popular game, but there was a lot of criticism about how linear it was, and we looked into the feedback, the player feedback, what people were saying, and that was one of the key things. They were like, it was a very linear game. So we wanted to break free of that. We wanted to basically put the control back in the player's hand. We wanted them to basically be in control of what they do in this world, when they do it. And yeah, basically allow them to experience guerrilla warfare in a big city, and yeah, take it however they want to, because that's what we did in Far Cry, that's what we did in Crysis. It was a sandbox environment, and that's what we're bringing to this.
How open is the game? Because I mean, we saw that, it looked like a map on the phone.
Yeah, so on that map, what we saw was you just gotten a call from some buddies, and they've just called you out for a mission against the KPA. So the map and that smartphone are important tools. So the smartphone allows you to do things like tag enemies, stay away at a distance, scope out the environment, see what kind of options you have. And then, obviously, now we're heading in to go to a resistance stash, which is where fellow resistance members have placed items that could be helpful to you. Obviously, the resistance need to keep a low profile, so they have these resistance stashes spread out all over Philadelphia, and they're identified by those hobo symbols that we just saw on the wall. So there are these graffiti symbols that kind of identify where these are. So it's a secret language for the resistance to keep tabs on where there are useful items for them. So that's where we're heading right now.
So I have a selfish question. I hang my hat in Philadelphia. That's where I call home.
Really?
How much of this will be familiar? Did you guys model it after the real city? Is there real geography here?
Absolutely. Well, we haven't gone like Google Maps accurate with this. We have taken what we felt were the main iconic landmarks So yeah, you being from Philadelphia and anyone who's been to Philadelphia will recognize these landmarks and will recognize these spaces. But the interesting thing about this space is it's Philadelphia, but not quite as you know it. We stayed true to these landmarks and what they are and how they look, but they've been augmented by this Korean occupation. So it's an interesting twist on it, on what you've probably seen in Philadelphia.
I imagine you'll see Independence Hall. You'll see.
Yeah, I'm not going to get into the specifics of what you'll see exactly, but you will see things that you're familiar with from that city. Yes.
And how will the game end?
Here's the thing. Can you run up the steps? Can you do the rock? Can you do the rock?
Rocky.
So yeah, so this is a resistance stash, and he's just picked up some cool items like a RC car, some weapons, and he's just going to make his way now to his target.
The lighting is nuts.
So, one of the things that Crytek is known for, in addition to having the word cry in their shooters, which you guys don't have either, is really great looking games. And
Sure.
So, this obviously looks a lot different than the first Homefront. How much of the visual, or did you take any visual cues or influence from the first game?
Well, for us it was, I mean, the first game had a lot of good things, and then it had obviously there were things that people were criticizing about it. But we wanted to take what we felt were the best things about Homefront, and that was the premise and the idea of being a guerrilla fighter and being this oppressed U.S. civilian citizen. You're not like a hardened military soldier in this. You're just an average guy. That's the idea. So we wanted to take those because we thought that was a really interesting setup for us to explore, and explore guerrilla warfare from a gameplay perspective was really exciting because it's something that's very different. You're not a hardened military soldier. You don't have all of the weapons and a pocket full of grenades on you all the time. You have to work for it because you're going up against an enemy that's far greater than you are. And if you're going to go head in, like straight, gung-ho, you're going to get taken down. So for us, it was important to take that and try to push it as forward as we could. We've obviously used a lot of the first-person shooter experience that we have, and we wanted to implement the best things of those into this game as well. So we've gone with the free roam stuff. We've gone with the weapon customization, which you just saw some of. We've gone with trying to encourage the player to explore this space because we're using the CryEngine, and the CryEngine is an awesome and very powerful tool. And we've got a bunch of amazing R&D guys in our studio that have helped us customize the CryEngine to exactly what we need it to be for this game. So we've got a lot of powerful stuff going on under the hood of this game. So we've got procedural day-night cycles, we've got dynamic weather, we've got an awesome, amazing, rich emergent AI system, which allows us to populate Philadelphia with civilians, and we as designers don't really have control over what's happening second to second on the streets. It's a living, breathing ecosystem. Everything is happening whether you're there or not. So all of the stuff that's going on in the world can influence how you approach a mission. Random things can happen that can change the tide of the mission. So everyone who plays through this game will most likely have a very different experience of each of the missions depending on what's going on in the world around them. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that we're bringing to the table, and the CryEngine is definitely allowing us to push all of that forward.
So looking at this city and also comparing actually to Crisis 2 and Crisis 3 is New York. What is the fascination with the city in decline, or specifically American city in decline? Is it just fun to create that?
Well, I'm not an artist, but I know it looks really cool. Yeah. We have an amazing art team, and all of this stuff looks really cool. But the reason for us using Philadelphia as the base for Homefront was mainly because of it's a city built on independence. It's the birthplace of U.S. independence. So from a narrative point of view, it just felt right for this game. It also was something that, because of that, we wanted to, from a narrative point of view, push it in the direction of representing how far this power shift has gone. So this is literally the U.S. at the end of its economic decline. It's on its knees basically in this game, and the Koreans have taken over. So it's, from a narrative point of view, it's a very, very rich city to explore. So yeah, as far as what's going on the screen right now, we've just used an RC car and we've hit our target, and now the KP ain't nowhere there. So we're going to use all of the equipment that we just scavenged to try and rescue our buddies from the police station and get out of there.
So, for those of us who cared about the Homefront mythos up to this point, which is myself, and you're wondering, how did we get here after shooting the Stormtroopers at the end of the original Homefront?
Yeah.
Is there an explanation? Is there a connection between the two stories, or is this kind of a fresh start?
So there is a connection. I can't talk about it.
Okay.
Maybe at some point down in the future, more will be revealed as to what happened in those years leading up to this Homefront.
Sure.
But what we are going with is definitely that this occupation is at its peak. The KPA are definitely in full control, and the premise is basically what we are taking from the original Homefront, but we've got a brand new cast of characters. It's basically our take on that universe. And that universe, like you said, it was a really interesting setup. It was a really interesting and it just provided a lot for us to explore as developers, and we were really excited because we feel that this game allows an experience in a first-person shooter that hasn't really been put out there before. Sure. Being a guerrilla fighter, trying to experience tackling an enemy that's bigger than you, but also having to scavenge and utilize everything around you. So it provides a very different dynamic to the first-person shooter genre and some of the games that have been out there before. This
might be a strange question, but Crytek seems like maybe the one big publisher at this point that really encourages their developers to develop towards PC and kind of take full advantage of it. There are obviously other publishers out there who have games on PC,
sure,
but it seems like it's very much a console-first mentality, and kind of it wouldn't be bad if PC looked pretty similar to consoles. But here, the game looks exceptional.
Yeah.
Does that free you up at all as a developer, or is it just kind of you're just used to it basically at this point?
Well, we're very fortunate to have an amazing engine that we use, and again, it comes back to the power of the CryEngine, because for us, that engine allows us to develop what we want to develop, and then it translates everything onto each of the platforms that we're developing for. And it does that in such a way that it allows us to push each of the platforms to the limit. So we don't really have to worry that much about the constraints. And Homefront: The Revolution is being developed for next-gen consoles only, and then the PC, Mac and Linux as well. But the idea is that the CryEngine allows us to push the boundaries of what we can achieve with this game, and then it allows us to get the best out of all of the platforms that we're working on. So it gives us a lot of flexibility to just focus on the content and not have to worry that much about the technical constraints.
There does seem to be one thing that I haven't seen with this demo that I feel like has been pushed onto almost every other demo of the show, which is the co-op play, where people keep saying tango and watch your six over and over again. Is that something that would be for this, or can we expect, obviously you guys know a thing or two about multiplayer?
Yeah, so we're not talking that much about multiplayer at the moment, but what we are saying is we do have 4-player co-op. But if you were paying close attention to that demo, we are actually showing in that demo some co-op features. So you've got some buddies in there that are helping you through this mission. For this setup, we were just showcasing that we don't actually have live guys playing. Yeah. But the idea is that they will be present and they will be part of the world with you. We have a separate co-op mode, which is basically all of Philadelphia as it is in the single-player game. But it's available to you and your buddies to explore, do these resistance missions, and everything that your friends do will influence your game, and it's a living, breathing world for you to mess around in. So
I keep asking every developer, because this is kind of a theme of the show.
Yeah.
Where did this come from? Like for you, do you think that's how people want to play their games now, where it's like, oh, it can be single-player, and if I really want somebody, they can hop in?
Yeah. Well, for us, it was important to try and provide the best experience that we thought this game and this narrative and premise was calling out for. We felt that the co-op experience provided that. You being a resistance fighter and setting up a resistance cell with your friends, it helped provide a setup where you can share the experience of being a resistance cell and try to help each other out and go against an enemy that's far greater than you. And also tackle all of the scenarios and obstacles that are put in your way however you want to, because your friends could be doing something else that could set off a completely different experience than to my cell. And everyone has their own experience, and if you get your buddies involved, they can do a whole bunch of things that you probably couldn't do on your own.
Sure.
So even in that demo, what we saw was one of your friends actually set off an explosive, maybe a block down the road, and that kind of led the KPA away from where you were going. That didn't necessarily have to happen, but it was something that your friend chose to do. Again, random things like that can completely change how the world is functioning and what's happening in the world, so it changes the experience altogether. And these are all things that us as designers, we can't actually predict. These are all things that are just happening in the game. It's all emergent gameplay. This is all stuff that the player is doing and the world it's just living and creating these experiences. So
Sure.
So you guys are in the UK. This is Crytek UK, which is former team members of Free Radical, which made Time Splitters. You guys have been working on the multiplayer modes for Crysis games. This is the first full standalone game by Crytek UK. Can you tell me a little bit about like the studio's culture and history, and like, you know, what if any we're seeing in the game here?
Yeah, so obviously we were Free Rad, then Crytek came in and purchased Free Radical. Then we were basically the multiplayer specialists, the console multiplayer specialists, and we were there for the Crysis 2 multiplayer, then the Crysis 3 multiplayer. So that was an interesting time because Crysis 2 was the first game that Crytek was actually working on consoles with. So that was it was a learning experience and a development experience, not only for everyone involved, but also for the CryEngine, because we were trying to get the CryEngine to be more expansive on these platforms that it hadn't been used for before. So Crysis 2 was an interesting experience because it was developing the engine along with the development of the game. In Crysis 3, we had a pretty sturdy engine by that point, so we could focus a lot more on the content. Obviously, that was us contributing to the Crysis series in the multiplayer, which we've been working on, and that was kind of our heritage. Now we've expanded, obviously. This is our first single-player proper campaign, which is exciting for everyone because it gives us something new to get into. And like I said, the whole guerrilla warfare aspect of things and going free roam with it was... It's a challenge, definitely, but it's definitely an exciting challenge that everyone's really enjoyed.
How big is the team? I mean, it seems like, you know, relative to working on the multiplayer mode of a Crysis game, it seems like a much more ambitious project.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've grown substantially since Crytek has taken us over. I don't know the exact numbers, but I believe it's maybe less than around 140, 150 people. But we're focusing on making the best games that we think we can do, and we're trying to push the boundaries of what we've got the CryEngine doing as well, because this is a game that we haven't. This is a game that we've created. It's a scale that we haven't done before in a game that we've worked on. So it's very exciting. It is definitely good stuff, and everyone's enjoyed it. So.
Did it seem like people had maybe a stack of single-player ideas after all those years, or like, now that we've got it, here we go?
Yeah, I think everyone has a whole bunch of ideas. Yeah. Everyone has like loads of ideas that they'd love to get into games. Obviously, not all of them work, but for us, it was important that we focused on the main pillars of what we wanted this game to be. It's interesting because when we were working with THQ, it was a very different game to what it became. Because when we were working with THQ, it was still very much a level-to-level game. So you would play through one level, get the next one, load up to the next one, so on and so forth. But once we got control of the IP, we decided to break free of that. We were like, we try to push it as far as we can, try to get the most out of the engine as well. So go free roam with it and see what happens. And as long as we keep that pillar of guerrilla warfare and build a game around it, yeah, it would be good. So basically, all the content that we're putting into the game, we're trying to focus and ask ourselves, is this guerrilla? Is this guerrilla? Does this feel guerrilla? If it doesn't feel guerrilla, get it out. So we wanted to make sure that the experience does deliver on that guerrilla warfare aspect.
Yeah, that's very funny because all I can think of is maybe my favorite THQ game, which was Red Faction Guerrilla, which is a big open world game about going out and doing these sorts of things.
You know what's funny? I was thinking of another THQ game, which was Stalker.
Which also
another open world shooter.
That's great. I mean, that it looks like you're capturing that sense, and I don't know. I felt like the last generation people were kind of going for that. Maybe the technology wasn't quite there yet.
Sure.
But there was like obviously cult fan bases for both those games.
Yeah, absolutely. And
now this looks
absolutely
incredible. Basically,
cool,
I mean,
thank you.
Very, very, very pretty.
Yeah.
People don't know it, but we have our screen is a little blue compared to what you're looking at. And even with that, I was like, maybe they should just do it this way. Fire is blue, and that looks cool as hell. Cool. Do you have anything else?
Yeah. One last question. Like, you guys are making this at Crytek UK, but Crytek is like, you know, after the acquisition of Free Radical and Vigil and Austin, like, it is a very large, you know, international developer now. How much support do you get from the international teams? Is this really a kind of Crytek UK project and everyone else has their own projects and you guys work in silos? Or is this a sort of global effort?
Well, that's the thing. I think that one of the advantages of obviously having different studios is that you can always share the project and the workload if it comes to that. We've got different studios all over the world, and they all have their own projects. But on this project, we have Crytek UK has been the focus, has been completely focused on this game. This has been our baby, basically. But we do utilize a lot of resources over in Frankfurt. That's where our HQ is, and yeah, we've got a bunch of guys working on Homefront content over there as well. So yeah, it's for us, we're all in different countries and different cities, but our network is basically like we can communicate with each other as if they're just in the next room. So it's very helpful, it's very handy, and obviously sharing resources across a big game like this it's definitely helpful.
Cool, cool. Well, thanks for joining us.
No worries, it was a pleasure, absolute pleasure, yeah.
And thank you for joining us. You can see more of this all week. We are on Polygon.com, or if you want more videos, we're on YouTube.com/Polygon. Until next time, we will see you later.